Hey, well, tonight we're angry about reactions to Georgia's election laws. You may have heard that the chief executives of two of the largest corporations in Georgia, Coca-Cola and Delta Airlines, both came out against what they claimed were efforts at voter suppression by the Georgia legislature, and even President Biden himself has weighed in, calling it outrageous. Let's take a look at what Georgia actually did that caused this reaction. First of all, you can see the headline here: Coke and Delta oppose Georgia's unacceptable voting law. Now, we'll look at the statements from each of these individuals separately. First, this is Delta's CEO, Ed Bastian, in a memo to employees on Wednesday, said that the law was unacceptable and based on a lie of widespread fraud in the last November's election. Hours later, Coca-Cola's CEO also pronounced the measure unacceptable. The quote from the Coca-Cola CEO is as follows: "This legislation is unacceptable. It's a step backwards. It does not promote principles we have stood for in Georgia around broad access to voting, around voter convenience, about ensuring election integrity." Now, if you look back a couple of days to Monday, the 29th of March specifically, you can see a post that I made which pointed out that if an illegal vote is cast, that will cancel out a legal vote. And all of us who are here in America legally, voting legally, obviously would want our votes to count. Any illegal vote that is counted will just nullify a legally cast vote. What is it that Georgia has done that has caused such vehement condemnation, both from the president and from the heads of two of Georgia's largest corporations? Well, the first thing that Georgia is being accused of is closing the polls at 5 p.m., which would not allow people who have a job to vote. This is not true. Georgia's polls are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on election day. This should enable everybody who needs to vote to vote. The second issue is the issue of absentee ballots. Now, absentee ballots have obviously become a minefield recently. Nobody knows if the absentee ballots were signed by the voter. Nobody knows if the absentee ballots were collected illegally. Nobody knows if the absentee ballots even correspond to a legally cast vote. And this is the reason why so many people are uncomfortable with the idea of absentee ballots. Georgia's attempt to solve this problem was to demand that every absentee ballot contain verifiable information, such as a driver's license or some other government-issued ID that would make verifying the validity of these ballots easier. And the third thing that Georgia has done, which you've heard people complain about, is they have said that it is illegal to provide water to anybody in line. As a matter of fact, the law that was passed denies any political operative the right to do anything to influence somebody within 150 feet of a polling place. Whether it's offering them water, whether it's offering them advice, whether it's offering them counsel, you cannot approach anybody within 150 yards of a polling place. There can be unattended water supplies, and people can get water if they need it. But we should all care that votes are counted legitimately. Our concern should not be in protecting the rights of illegitimate votes. Our concern should be in ensuring that every legitimate vote is counted. There shouldn't be any illegitimate votes counted. You know, there's been issues with the voting systems in this country going back to 1960, when the story is that Mayor Daley of Chicago helped deliver Illinois to JFK, ensuring that he won the election. That's 60 years ago. I'm sure that there have been shenanigans galore since then. I know that in the Bush era, the Clinton era, questions were raised about voting. Isn't it time that we put this issue to bed? Isn't it in all of our interests that legitimate votes be counted? All legitimate votes be counted, which means that any illegitimate vote should not be counted. It is in everybody's interest that these systems be trustworthy, that we can have transparency. Ideally, we should all be able to look online and verify that our votes were cast correctly. We can't do that today. We have no idea what's happening. There's no paper trail. And even when Georgia adopts measures that seem reasonable, not only does the president come out against them, but the CEOs of two of the largest corporations in America also throw their hats into the political ring. I will point out that the Delta CEO is arguing that providing ID to vote is a bad idea. Delta itself demands that I provide ID before I fly on Delta, and yet Delta seems to think that no ID is necessary to vote. How does that possibly make sense? It should seem obvious to all of us that having a fair election is our goal. I don't care if your candidate wins or my candidate wins, as long as the election was fair. This last election was such a debacle that half of the country is convinced that it was not fair, and the only way that we can get back to the America that we remember is if we have confidence that our votes are counted fairly and that illegally cast votes are not counted. The reaction to these new Georgia laws is beyond outrageous. The measures that Georgia has put in place do not seem unreasonable. The reactions to these measures just show you how far afield the opponents of fair elections have gone. Please, let's have fair elections. Let's choose a leader that we have chosen, not that the politicians have chosen. But above all, please, let's wake up.